My name's Beth. My name is Beth Rossner. I'm the CEO of the Berkeley Chamber of Commerce. On the call with me is my teammate, Bobby Gillette. He is our administrator of this Zoom meeting. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in chat and he'll take care of you. We are recording this session today and we'll be posting it to our website for future use. So we encourage you to check it out if you've missed anything. I want to first just thank our sponsors for this bootcamp session, the Berkeley Public Library and their foundation. With us on the call is Jeff Finley, their representative from the library. So thank you, Jeff and the library. We really appreciate your support in helping us provide this educational content to our entrepreneurs here in the city. So without further ado, I'd like to kick off today's finance program by introducing our educator, Beth Crittenden. Beth transitioned from a background in somatic psychology and healthcare administration to specializing in small business finance. She teaches business owners how to embrace the beauty that is available to us in numbers and financial clarity. She also maintains an active bookkeeping practice for 10 businesses within various industries. Beth feels strongly that demystifying and destigmatizing, talking about and understanding finances is an important route to growth and empowerment. So I encourage you to be interactive and be attentive, and let's all take in what Beth has to offer us. So Beth, welcome.
Thank you so much, Beth. Great taste in first names. Here we are. Team Beth, thank you so much to the Berkeley Chamber for inviting me and the public library. Fantastic. Thanks everyone for being here. Really appreciate you. And I want to start off the invitation by encouraging you to, let's say you don't yet have a small business, but you would really like to. You're in the right place. You're not behind. You're not running late, none of that stuff. You are where you are. Let's say you've had a small business for a few years now, and maybe you feel like you should know some of this stuff, or maybe you feel like, oh, what am I even doing here? And I just want to welcome those parts of the mind. Like my mind was kicking up this morning of what do I have to say, and all those different things. And I really feel like these voices are trying to protect us in their own way. But we're here together to learn, to hopefully be inspired, and to get that much more clear. So just imagine we're kind of going on a hike together, and sometimes the mind will have it look like there's no path forward in your particular situation. But I assure you there is some way, somehow. So I definitely want this to be interactive. So the way I'm picturing it as well is this is a really big topic. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot that I have to share. I'm super excited about it. And I also acknowledge that not everyone is super excited about it. So I'm going to try to kind of just give you little samplers. So I will do a bit of talking on each of the points that I want to share with you. And then I'm going to leave space for people to ask questions, for people to share briefly if there are experiences you've had that may help some other folks who are here too. Really feel free. Your voice is really welcome. And I'm also going to use a timer so that I can make sure to get through all of the things that I'd like to share with you. So if you hear a little bing bing, it's not a fire alarm or anything. It's just me wanting to keep pace. So first of all, I encourage you to stretch, move your body, make sure you can feel butt on chair, or even if you need to stand up, if your back's a little sore. For me, I can't learn if I'm floating above my head or if I'm super distracted. So make sure your body is super comfortable. Make sure you have some water. Water helps refresh us as well. So all of that housekeeping being covered, I appreciate Beth sharing with you that introduction. I have had, please know, the most unlikely path to becoming a small business financial consultant. I did not choose it, it chose me. And I thought I was going to be so many other things than this as a professional. And I see now why I got to come down this path, but I didn't in the beginning. And I really share that with you because so many people that I talk to feel like they are maybe irrevocably damaged when it comes to understanding this stuff. And it's okay if you don't feel that way as well. I just want to make sure that the invitation is fully there for you to feel welcome here. And it's right that you're here. So let's start the first timer. And I'm going to start with our first slide here. And I'll go back and forth between the slides. So the financial coach piece is when I sit with someone else, help them work through how will the work of this, the task of this get done. Bookkeeping, that part of my business, as Beth said, is full, it's flourishing, it's interesting. I work with a variety of businesses, and that's something that I really enjoy about this, is getting to visit different industries and see what their financial flow is. Also, that is to say, these things that I teach you are applicable to very many different businesses. That's something that I like about this information as well, is it's quite universally applicable. I can't see all of you, but I'll be curious to hear if anyone has heard of Profit First, other than my people who are here, who I've told you about it. I used to be a Profit First professional. I stepped off that path, but I still love sharing the information. The principles of it are wonderful. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. So here's our overview for today. I want to cover 5 main points. We'll get into the first one in a moment. And that is the why. And sometimes people feel a pressure, like they should track their business finances and have clarity. But I find should to be not motivating. And for me, it motivates me in the opposite direction. Like, I'm going to clean out a utility drawer before I do something that my mind tells me I should do. So I like helping people find their particular motivations. And yeah, we'll get into that in a moment. I'll talk about some of the tools that are available and my experience with them. We're going to talk about, if you've ever heard of P&L, that just means profit and loss. We'll get into that, and a balance sheet is short for balance sheet. So we'll look at some of that together. Profit First, as I mentioned, just touching on that briefly, but know that for all of these, there's a ton of information available online. So this will be kind of a sampler, and definitely make sure don't keep this in your head. I don't know if any of you do the David Allen system, getting things done. I find that to be wonderful for organizing and prioritizing. And he encourages us to not keep anything in the mind because it gets cluttered up there. So when you feel inspired, when you feel curious, definitely leave yourself a note somewhere, text yourself or write it down, write it in your hand if you need to, and then come back to it. And then we'll save some time for how can we turn down the pain if you perceive this to be a painful process, and how to find the joy in this. All right. So here are the 4 reasons that are motivating for me and tend to I think, touch people in different ways. And we'll have some time, like I said, if you have other motivations or if you need clarification on any of these, I'll stop talking and we can revisit it together. The four main reasons that I know of, one reason is just tax compliance. Everybody knows we need to file taxes each year. I've definitely worked with some folks who have kind of gotten behind on their taxes, and it can get scary. It can get like it seems monumental, but something that I love about working with the numbers is they are always there for me to discover them. So they don't run away from me. They don't try to hide from me. And the numbers don't sit there and judge me if I haven't done something or if I made a mistake or something like that. So that's part of what has working with numbers feel like a really safe haven for me. Sometimes people track their numbers for their business and they stop there. What I don't like about that is I don't have a business just so the IRS approves of things. I want it to be meaningful for me, and I want it to really sit down before I start spending, before I start earning, and I want to do a predictive plan. So when we chart our course, we say, this is my best guess of what I think is going to happen with the numbers. And this is where I'd like it to take me. This one can be scary. It can bring up a lot of our perfectionism. I know it does for me. And it can, you know what I find for me, when I say, I'd like to generate this amount of income, both of my fear of success and my fear of failure arise. And that's kind of a trip. It's like, well, what do you want me to do, mind? But when I have the numbers, they can be kind of a grounding and kind of a tether to where I'd like the business as a vehicle to take me. The third way that I find it motivating for why do I want to track my business numbers and spend time on it and face the discomfort and all of that stuff, when I can look back and say, hey, what actually happened? Like, either I worked really hard, I want to know how did the numbers work out, or I feel like I didn't work that much last month. What really happened in the numbers? To bring together that qualitative experience along with, well, wait, what if someone who had no judgment of me and who had no preference in how I conduct my business, what do these numbers have to tell me? So reflecting, and then, hey, how about the power of putting B and C here together side by side? When I have a plan, and then when I can get the actual data and see, did I meet that? And I can learn from that. I find that gives a lot of traction for business owners. I know so many people where their business plan, unofficially or not, is just work as much as I possibly can. Work so much so that it doesn't kill me, but that I can also keep going. And I really like the dignity that it brings when I work within my conscious, kind plan. And we all have different levels of energy, and we all have kind of different internal callings in this life. So maybe it is someone's highest and best choice to work all the time and see what happens. I just tried it and it wore me out so much that I needed to do something else. So if you're in that situation too, if you have health concerns, if you have other things that you're super passionate about, like I'm addicted to playing tennis. I want to do it as much as I possibly can. I joke with people that I'm self-employed, so I can schedule my business around my tennis. And that for me is a really good, fun life that then makes the work that much more fun too. Which kind of gets into D here of, wait a second, like, why am I in this business again? Why am I doing this? What are the things that are most important to you? And the numbers will hopefully support you in expressing that and being able to live that. So I'm going to stop the share now. And I would love to hear if anyone has a question, a comment, want to share your own experience with it.
And if anyone is shy, you're welcome to put something in the chat as well.
Sneak it in, yeah.
Hi, Beth. I just wanted to share that I really love your approach. I love your sort of mindset first methodology going on here. And I'm kind of getting the message that the numbers don't lie. So really, which is, I mean, something I know, but like, it's always good to have a reminder of that. So yeah, just wanted to say I like your approach and looking forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Mimi. I really appreciate that. And that brings up a wonderful point of, it's this paradox of both the numbers don't lie and they also don't tell the whole story. So that's so important to me as well. And that's that last one on the list, which for me is the first one on the list in terms of, okay, I'm not in business to have my numbers look perfect. You know, there needs to be some kind of process where, yes, I know the numbers, I'm aware of them, I understand them enough that I could explain them to someone else. You know, we could have a list of very basic questions of, okay, so what did your business earn last month? What were your tax deductible expenses? What did the business pay you? And then, are you healthy? Are you enjoying yourself? You know, so much of it is quantifiable. And then the part that isn't is where that human spark of connection is so important. And I feel like a lot of the financial industry can come from a bit of the toxic masculine perspective of work, and effort first. Prove yourself until you include your heart in it. Like really earn the right to rest or try something different. And I really feel passionately about this path of having an integrated business model where, yep, I'm on my numbers, I know them, I'm putting in wise effort or right effort, as the Buddhist path might say. And I feel aligned also by bringing in my nourishment, my refreshment, my joy. And I really hope that for all of you. It's so vulnerable for some of us to start a business, especially when we're going to be forward facing. That experience of people deciding whether or not they want to work with us, or deciding whether or not they want to buy the thing that we have, poured our heart and soul into. I find that takes support as well. So I want to make sure that my numbers are inclusive of the care that I need as I proceed with being a business owner. Thank you, Mimi. That was perfect. Okay, we're going to go on to our next. Aren't you excited? What could it possibly be? Okay, so this is so which tracking system is best for you? You may be using one already. That's wonderful. You may like it just fine and just have an ear out for what are some other possibilities. You may feel like, oh, I know I need one, but it's so overwhelming. There are so many of them. So I'm going to deliver this point from the perspective of, let's just pretend you're starting fresh. You, of course, don't have to change anything, but just let's kind of look at it together from the perspective of how does someone choose one initially. So I find the most important thing beyond all tech design, beyond all who else is using it, beyond all anything is, are you actually using it? So I've definitely seen people who have paid for years and years of software subscriptions that, oh, they are keeping that company going, but they sure aren't using it. And there's no shame in that. You know, sometimes it's like, well, even if I'm not using it, at least I could. And sometimes that's where we're at. But the most important is, are you using it? And you using it might mean that you actually do. It might mean that you pay someone else to do. And either way, all good. So the next most important, let's say you're like, all right, I'm considering this one. Yeah, I'm going to use that. I'm not just telling myself lies this time. I'm going to use it. And then next most important, I do want you to factor in your enjoyment of it. So sometimes we can miss this. And in my years in the financial industry, it is astounding to me how often we as the consumer are supposed to conform to what someone else thinks should work for us. So I like to bring back that locus of decision and just like ask yourself from a creative perspective, from an intuitive perspective, do I like looking at the system? I've definitely supported people in changing bookkeeping software. If they just don't like the look of it, that's all right. And I have a lot of compassion for people who are designing these systems. The banking industry has changed so much. I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but sort of like the security code process continues to evolve. And the tracking softwares for finances are supposed to be able to connect with how many countless banks who also keep changing their login procedures. So sometimes the frustration is not with the software itself, but it's maybe with a shifting banking industry. So that's interesting to look at too. If you're frustrated, where's the appropriate place to focus that frustration? The next question of, does the software inherently make sense to you? There's a couple different types of discomfort. So let's say I'm just starting with a software and it's like I'm speaking a new language. I feel kind of clunky with it. I don't feel fluid with it yet. I don't want that to stop people from pursuing one. If though, after you've used it, and maybe you've talked with someone else who has experience with it, if you've gone through all that and you're just like, you know what, this just doesn't make sense to me, that's all right to jump ship. That's all right to say, there's going to be another designer who put together a software that it just makes more sense to me, because they do have different approaches. It's like looking from different angles at the same set of information. So a few that I recommend, if you have just a service-based business, what I use for my business is called YNAB. It stands for You Need a Budget. I love it. My timer is fussing at me, but I'm going to keep talking about this one for a minute. I love it, love it, love it, love it. I look forward to being in my YNAB. And the website is there, youneedabudget.com. There's a free trial if you want it. They have fantastic online support available. And it was primarily designed for personal finances. It's fantastic for that too. That's how I track my personal finances. I do 2 different files in my one YNAB login. If YNAB is not quite for you, or you don't want to get through the learning curve or what have you, the one that is the most commonly recognized is QuickBooks. Let me tell you a little bit about QuickBooks from an unbiased perspective. So QuickBooks used to be desktop, and like we would go and we'd buy a CD or however and load it in. Sorry, kids, you probably don't know what that is, but it used to be that way. And every year you'd go back and you'd buy the new upgrade or what have you. And QuickBooks said, or the makers of it, it's made by Intuit. They said, you know what, we're going to get on this subscription model. So some bookkeepers and accountants out there are still using desktop QuickBooks. Intuit is actually starving that out, and they won't even talk to you anymore usually about the desktop version. So most people now have a subscription, and some people find it user-friendly enough. It depends on the business. It depends on the person. My caution to you about QuickBooks is I find it too easy to make mistakes in QuickBooks. So if you learn how to catch them, if you learn how in the reconciliation process to find anything that went a little bit wonky in the bank feed, it can work and it's fine and it's great. And like I said, most accountants use it in my experience. It is going to be a little bit pricier than other subscriptions. Sometimes bookkeepers will get a bit of a discount, but generally it's going to run you between $20 and $40 a month for a small business, and like that. So good choice if your business can afford it and if you have someone who knows what they're doing. For me, I took a college class to learn how to use QuickBooks. I would not, I don't think, have been able to just navigate through on my own. And I'm really comfortable with databases and stuff like that. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Some other ones that are popular with people, depending on the business, Xero spelled with an X. That is a company that was formed, as far as I can tell, solely to be an answer to QuickBooks. So they really worked on being more user-friendly and more like consumer focused. FreshBooks, I love. That's going to be when you want to make sure that your invoicing is on point and when your expenses are fairly straightforward. They do a great job, and their company is very similar to YNAB in that they're really like a teaching company. They really want you to get the principles along with the nuts and bolts of keeping track of your numbers. A tennis friend is calling me right now. It's too bad she's not here. I'm not going to take the call now. Then Wave is another one. It's fairly simple, straightforward. When a business doesn't have inventory or doesn't have a tremendous amount of tax information to track, that's another good one. It's really straightforward. So I'm going to pause again. I would love to hear from people. If you have another one that you really like using, or if you have a horror story you'd like to get off your chest about a particular tracking software, would love to hear from you.
Hi, this is Krista. Hello to everyone in the room. Thank you for your time, Beth. Um, Excuse the congestion, I'm fighting a cold here. I don't necessarily have a horror story on the business end with QuickBooks. However, I do recall trying to save some money and utilize them on the personal end back in college, which may have been slightly advantageous. And somehow I manipulated myself into a completely different tax bracket. So I I would definitely recommend some. I'm not sure if a individual or outsourcing would be necessary, maybe a couple of YouTube university courses, but just a little bit of prior knowledge going into QuickBooks on any end.
Oh, Krista, that's a good one. Whoo, that is real money right there when that happens. Thank you so much for sharing that. And YouTube University is a great idea. And they do trainings as well. So yeah, here's what I see happening when people are making the decision sometimes. So let's say I started a business in February and it's October now. I've definitely seen people go over a year, if not more, before they start to track their business numbers, because starting a business takes so much effort and there are so many aspects to think about, so many decisions to make. So when the time comes for people to make a decision about which one to use, sometimes there can be this overwhelm of, oh, I can't learn one more thing. I've already learned this marketing thing, and I've already taken this specialization course so that I can get this designation and all this stuff. Oh yeah, that's a great point, Beth. In the chat is another resource. Fantastic. Thank you, Berkeley Library, the gift that keeps on giving. Yes. Is it worth it to spend your time to study one, to take a class online, to do a trial, things like that? You know best whether it's worth it to spend your time and then bring in another kind of job aspect for your business versus, do I take some of my financial resources and pay someone to do the books? A question I get a lot is, how much should I pay a bookkeeper? There is such a wide range of what bookkeepers charge. I've seen people that charge $5 an hour. I've seen people that charge $600 an hour. Is there a dramatic difference in the quality of the work? Sometimes, and sometimes not. So you may hear the term full charge bookkeeper. Full charge is someone that's going to be sort of more self-directed, more self-guided. They're going to make suggestions. Often someone who charges a much lower rate, either hourly or monthly or however they bill, they might need more guidance from you, and you might need to stay in the place of being the one to ask them for your monthly report. And they may have lots and lots and lots of questions, or sometimes the much lower fee bookkeepers will do it a little bit more quickly. And it might be that come tax time, you've saved some money, but then you discover, oh no, they were putting that in a totally different category than what I wanted. So up to you how much you want to invest. And yes, thank you, Krista, for that. Wonderful point. So I'm going to share one more time. Let's go on to Our next one, I just wanted to show you what the YNAB budget screen looks like. So this is a business, the blue bars across are the main categories, and then the subcategories are underneath it. You can drag and drop these. I really like how easy it is to change this. The column, the first column of numbers of the 3 in the middle of the screen, that assigned, that means that's the same thing as budgeted. YNAB calls it giving dollars a job. So it doesn't mean that you have to spend it on that. It just means that that's part of your plan for this particular month. So you can see in the upper left hand, this is for October. So this screen comes up for each month. See how in the third category or the third column that says available, you have gray zeros, you have green little circles with money in it, and you have red negative numbers. This is how you see as the month proceeds and as you're spending or as you're moving money to your savings account and getting it out of the spendable realm, you see when you have basically dollar jobs that are still assigned to that category. You haven't spent it yet, but you have planned that you will spend in that category. And then when you overspend a budgeted category and it goes red, you know you need to either bring in some additional money into this month, or when things get a little bit closer to the edge, often at the end of the month, but it depends on your pay rhythm, you can bring it from another category. So like here in this budget, I have green dollars to be budgeted in the clinic and medical supplies category, that I could shift that amount over to the vaccines and medicines category. So that way it has everything together side by side. Something psychologically that happens for a lot of business owners is they silo the business's needs. So sometimes continuing education spend will be over here, and it seems like an entirely different thing than, say, paying my office rent. But this is like, well, actually, every dollar counts for the same amount of spending power, if you will. So we want to see the totals all together. Okay. Third item, your P&L, which also, if you ever hear income statement, that's the same thing as a profit and loss. It hurts me that the word loss was used for business expense. It's not a loss. I invested it into something in the business. So I don't like the frequency of that, but it is very commonly used. Basically, you could also call it what I made minus what I spent on the business. The tricky thing about this is you can't get the full picture by just looking at a business's profit and loss. Because sometimes we spend things out of our business account that are not tax deductible. And then I don't know what my business account has spent in total just by looking at a profit and loss. So if you remember back here to our for purposes, profit and loss is mostly in this tax compliance category. It is not, though, a complete statement. So please be careful about that. Balance sheet or balance sheet is basically like the pepper to the salt shaker of the profit and loss. They tend to go together, but they're also very different. So I'll explain the difference between the two. Okay. So Profit and loss, you can remember, has two different dates. Very, very, very important. It has a start date in time and an end date in time. So we're looking at, it's basically like the profit and loss is a sandwich and the dates are the two pieces of bread. Okay, so we're never really going to look at a profit and loss for just one day. That's hardly any information, unless it was a really significant day in your business financially. But usually we're going to look at a month, a quarter, a year. We're going to look at a profit and loss that compares 2021 to 2022. All right. So the top of the profit and loss is just what you earned for the business. It's not going to include if you brought your own money in. If you were like, oops, my checking account's a little bit low, I'm going to transfer $3,000 in from my personal account, and that's just how it is now until more people pay me. That money shouldn't show up on your profit and loss because it's not taxable. That's your money. You don't have to pay tax on that. If though clients paid you $10,000, that's going to be $10,000 at the top in that period of time. Then underneath that, I'm not sure how many of you have heard of cost of goods sold. It's a very, like a little more old-fashioned term, because it doesn't have to mean physical goods. It did in the beginning. One of my clients makes the little parts for the machinery that hospitals use. So, you know, let's say you visit someone in the hospital and there's the thing that makes the bed go up and down. They make the little like keypads and the stuff that makes the thing that makes the bed go up and down. So what that company pays to get the material to make that equipment, that's very literally cost of goods sold. If you pay someone to do work for your company and a client then pays you, what you paid that person, that can be considered cost of goods sold. It's not something that you would have paid them whether or not the client paid you. So that's the next level down underneath your taxable income. And it's a little bit different, but not entirely different from your tax deductible expenses. It just goes in a different place on your tax return. And let's say you're using TurboTax or something like that. It'll ask you to separate those expenses. So something that is a cost of goods sold expense just goes in a completely different place than tax deductible expense. Then what's left over when you subtract from your business income, when you subtract out cost of goods sold expenses minus tax deductible expenses, that's how you get what's called taxable income. That just means you're going to pay income tax on it unless you bring deductions from some other place. I'm not going to get into this over here on the right because it's a lot more granular, but for those who want to watch the recording, this is so good to study. And if you get hung up on any of it, just let me know. But these four differences are very, very important. But it is kind of like a next level of understanding it. I don't want to throw too many terms at you. Balance sheet. The way a balance sheet is different from a profit and loss is a balance sheet is more like a little pinpoint. Let's say you have an ink pen and you put a dot on the paper. That dot is what we're looking at for a balance sheet. It is as of one particular point in time, okay? It basically adds everything up to that point in time, and it tells you what you have left over. If you invoice people and they have what are called terms, if they have net 30, that means you've given them up to 30 days to pay you. Sometimes companies have net 60. A lot of corporations require now that they get net 60 terms to pay, which is luxurious for them and sucks for the small business owner a lot of the time. But hopefully, if you're tracking your finances and if you have a plan, then you're not super desperate for that money, and it'll just be great once it does come into your bank account. But the balance sheet needs to go with the profit and loss, because profit and loss just tells you what came in and what went out. Balance sheet is like, okay, as of this time, what's left and what do we expect to come in the future? So they go together, but they're also very different. All right. I'm just going to pause for a moment. Any quick questions, any comment about that? Let's go back to sharing, because sharing is caring. And all right, so this is just a little appetizer of profit first. In this quote of profit is not an event, it's a habit. I love that. What does that mean? In traditional accounting, profit is just a report of what happened. And if your business was profitable, great. And if not, okay, you take a tax loss. Something that's important to know is we can report a business loss financially on our taxes, meaning I spent more on the business than what the business paid the business, or what I got paid. I can do that for 3 years. After that, the business is considered a hobby, and I don't get to take the tax deduction anymore until it becomes profitable. So tax-wise, it definitely has a ramification. That 3 years is built in because whoever designed the tax code knows that it's flipping hard to start a business and get it to work. And there's no shame in that. It's literally built into this thing that we all have to deal with. This idea of making profit a habit, how does that work? So in Profit First, we set a group of percentages that add up to 100%. Let's say I set 15% of what I make, I'm going to set aside for income taxes. I know I'm probably going to owe them. I don't want to spend it before it's time. So many business owners I've seen have gotten into significant debt within the first couple of years of their business. Either they didn't know to pay quarterly taxes, or they just thought, well, the business is going to take off and I'll just catch up when I do. But sometimes it leads to debt, unfortunately. So before I spend it on anything else, I'm going to set aside 15% for taxes. I'm going to put it somewhere that the only thing I'm going to spend it on is income taxes. So then let's say I'm going to set aside 40% of whatever I earn, and I'm going to spend that on the business. So that's 55%. That leaves us with 45% of what else do I do? Oh, hey, I need to pay myself. This thing is a company that is supposed to be funding my life, at least eventually. So we want to set aside some to pay me for my life now. So that's probably going to be a pretty significant chunk, depending on your financial circumstances. we also know that there are going to be things we want to save for. There are aspirational things. There are things that take time. So I'm going to put a percentage set aside. Maybe that's retirement, and you're doing 5% of whatever you earn. That decision of the percentages, it's up to you. It's not up to me that I have to pay income taxes. It is up to me, what do I pay myself and what do I put into the business? And this idea of having a profit account is, let's say you start with 1% of all of that, no shame in that. You decide how often you're going to make the transfers. It might be once a month, it might be once a week, but you say in advance, I'm going to save X% for profit. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in a profit account, and then you get to spend it however you want to. So when I was talking to someone else about this, they were like, well, how do you know the right percentages? Just like YNAB encourages us to look at our budget and our spending plan as a very dynamic thing. One of the 4 rules of YNAB's budgeting is roll with the punches. Yeah, we make a plan, but we have to adjust. We get more information. We get a bill we didn't expect, something like that. This list of percentages is the same way. I want to change it willy-nilly, but let's say that I've set my percentages for October, I make the transfers accordingly, and then I see, ooh, I'm having to take out of my profit account to cover a business bill. At that point, either I've got to shift my percentages and put more into the business, or I've got to spend less on the business. So the pinch of this, the healthy growing pinch, is if I find I'm not able to keep up with the percentages I set, then I'm going to change my behavior. I'm going to change my plan. I'm going to change what I commit to. And that's how we get that traction to have financially successful businesses. It's a choice. And I know that that is a lot easier said than done. It's simple, but not easy, as we say in 12-step. So that's profit first. And I'm going to just hop right into this last idea of, you guys, this actually can be fun. I'm serious. So something to start with is check out this list of, if this stuff brings you a tremendous amount of anxiety, we want to just check through to see if any of these things are going on. Because if any of these things are going on, they need a little bit different medicine than just a mental shift of perspective. So sometimes clinical depression, which for transparency, I deal with that lifelong. The struggle is real and there's no shame in it. It's just a condition. But it can make it impossible to think clearly, much less feel hopeful about the future. So know that that takes some treatment. And if there's ADHD, which I run into a lot of folks who they'll try and then they'll bounce off of this and then they'll come back a couple of years later, and it's so hard for them to kind of ground into this without going way down a rabbit hole. That is something to check out. And Kama Jensen, who's here today, she's my go-to person when it comes to ADHD, getting diagnosed, getting good treatment, and highly recommend. So chat with her if you like. She's fantastic. Dyslexia. I actually discovered later in life that I have numbers dyslexia. And that's been really surprising to me, that I enjoy working with numbers so much, but this is where the reconciliation process, where I make sure that my tracking software exactly matches what the bank knows. Sometimes I'll catch something and let's say it's just an odd amount off. Sometimes I just accidentally got the numbers backwards when I had to enter it manually. And it looked right to me because I have number dyslexia. It's not a intelligence thing. I'm a very intelligent person that sometimes my brain flip-flops numbers. So that one's workable, but we need some different support as well. If there is debting or spending issues, that can make it so hard. It can be so fast to spend, and it's so much less sexy, so much less gratifying to save, to delay gratification. And if there are compulsions, or if there's stuff that you learned in your family system growing up, that can be really intense. There's a 12-step program called Debtors Anonymous, DA for short. There's also a 12-step program called Under Earners Anonymous, or UA for short. So I recommend checking those out if you feel like the debting, like you're drowning in it, or with the under earning, if it feels like you're organized, you're using the tools, but you feel like you keep getting in your own way, or like it's really hard to price your services appropriately. Those programs are great for clearing that out. Limiting beliefs are super powerful. They're often buried in our subconscious. And then also so much of this work is boundaries. If I am too tired to take a break, if I am I'd love to take on another client, but I just feel like I can't even keep up with my life and I legitimately need the money, but how could I even find the time to earn more money? That is boundaries, and it definitely takes practice. So in this last minute here, I'll leave you with the inspiration of, let's say you're addressing any of these things or whatever else might be in your way. For me, I'm a dancer as well, and I love finding the connection of the rhythm of music with numbers. So when I go through and I'm doing someone's books, to find the kind of the silent music and the numbers, for me, is so interesting. For other people, if you really like tidying up, if you really like getting things orderly, if you get a rush out of that, bookkeeping can be great for that too, of like, shoo, it's done. For other people, being empowered with the knowledge, you may not like the process itself, but knowing your stuff and being able to look someone in the eye and say, I earned X amount last month. This month, my goal is to earn this amount, and this is how I plan to do it. That is so badass, and I wish it for all of you. And so many people here have really important gifts to offer, and I really want you to be supported by your numbers and by this flow and this practice. So I will stop there. Thank you again so much to the Chamber of Commerce and the Berkeley Public Library. It's been so fun to be with you all.
Beth, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I really appreciate your outlook and approach to bookkeeping, and that it can be fun. We really appreciate you taking the time and spending your afternoon with us. Thank you to everybody who attended. Thank you to the library. We invite you to join us for our next session of Bootcamp on Thursday, November 10th, where we'll be tackling website building basics. focusing on Wix. So we hope to see you all there. You can register on our website, and we will send a copy of these slides, if that's okay with Beth, to everybody who attended today. So you'll see those in your inbox later, along with a link to rewatch this program. So thank you everyone for spending your time with us, and we will see you soon. Have a good day.